to talk to her. For the past 6 months, he'd been keeping track of everywhere she went and everything she did by following her around the neighborhood whenever he got the chance. That's how he knew everything there was to know about Camilla Prentice. There'd been the time last summer when he'd stationed himself outside her bedroom window while she slept. He'd stayed there for hours and hours, and had been lucky enough to see her get up to go to the bathroom. His stakeout had lasted until 4:30 that morning. That perfect time right before the sun came up, when he'd have to leave to get ready to go to church. From that day forward, he'd trailed after her on her trips to the mall, then again each time she walked to the store for her mother. He knew for a fact that just recently she'd started babysitting on a limited basis for the Granger family. The Grangers lived a block over on Cedar Ridge, and whenever Mr. and Mrs. Granger went out to dinner on Saturday nights, Camilla looked after the couple's baby daughter. He knew because he'd kept a vigil outside the living room window. Once, he'd almost gotten caught when the Grangers had returned earlier than planned. Since their meal out had lasted no more than 90 minutes, he hadn't had the time to work up his courage to act, to do what he wanted to do with Camilla. That's why tonight would be special. He'd see to it. For weeks now, he'd felt the change occurring inside him. He'd recognized the signs building. His urges had grown stronger and stronger. If his control slipped, he knew there would be no turning back. Up to now, it had taken a tremendous amount of effort to lock away his burning fury. But with each tick of the clock, he felt himself losing ground, losing another inch on the tether that held him back from opening that door. He saw a sliver of blinding light and knew full well he had no choice but to break through the barrier to get to the other side. He glanced over at the other kids to see if anyone had noticed him. As usual, no one had. For much of his life, Dillard Barstow had been an invisible entity. So far, he'd been lucky. No one had caught on to the seething rage inside. Dillard was fed up with it all. Tonight he would release all those feelings he'd kept under wraps for so long. Tonight would be his inaugural run. After an hour or so, he watched Camilla gather up her little brother and walk off down the street, heading back to her house. For now, he made himself sit like a statue to keep from going after her. Now wouldn't work. Following her might tip his hand. Broad daylight wasn't the best time to act. The little brother would surely get in the way and need to be dealt with. So he would wait for her to walk over to her babysitting job at the Grangers. Tonight, he'd let loose his inner demons. His heart beat faster just thinking about it. Glancing down at the Timex on his wrist, he counted the hours until Camilla would leave her house. He'd have to bide his time till then. In the meantime, there were 100 things he needed to do to get ready. He would go over his plan until he left nothing to chance. That afternoon, he prepared right up to supper time when he packed a satchel and snuck out of his house at 6:30 on the dot. Since his parents were headed to a planned event at church and would be there until 10 that night, he had more than ample time to spend with Camilla. It took him 7 minutes to walk over to Cedar Ridge. Once he reached the Grangers' single-story home, the first thing he noticed was that the couple's car wasn't parked in the driveway. Panic set in. How long had the Grangers been gone? If they usually stayed out for an hour and a half, as his frequent late-night skulking in the shadows said they did, the clock had already started ticking. Damn his mother for making him clean his room. If he'd been able to leave earlier, he would have been here to note the exact time they'd backed out of the driveway. Now he wasn't exactly certain how long he had to get inside. Taking several deep breaths to settle down, he needed to get his mind back on the prize. He had to get a grip. With his first kill, he was bound to make a few mistakes. Okay, so Camilla was already inside alone with the baby. But since the Grangers ate a meal with lightning speed, he had to work fast. He'd have to step up his plan of action because they'd be coming back soon enough. That kind of thinking had him moving his ass around to the back of the house. He peered through the window of the baby's room, the window he'd already broken the lock on 2 nights before. The little girl wasn't in her crib yet. He couldn't see or hear anyone around, so he lifted the frame of the glass and scuttled over the ledge, dropping onto the floor. Without a sound, he scurried on all fours into the closet before Camilla caught him and slid the mirrored door almost closed. Impatient, he waited, watching through the slice of an opening he'd left. His wait lasted so long.